Toronto, the beating heart of Canada's finance, tech, entertainment, and tourism. The city is a global center, brimming with headquarters of banks, multinationals, startups, and cultural attractions. So for decades, it's been known to offer that vibrant urban experience that many newcomers seek. Renowned for its cultural mosaic, Toronto earned the title of the most diverse city globally in 2016, boasting a rich tapestry woven from welcoming over 200 unique ethnic backgrounds. But currently, the city stands on the brink of a crisis. A city once hailed as the crown jewel of Canada currently stands as a grim reminder of unchecked urbanization. Canada's city of dreams, now possessing some harrowing truths, is quickly becoming one of the worst places to live. But how did a city once renowned for its vibrancy, diversity, and opportunities, a place where ambitions were pursued and aspirations soared, now become a hellish nightmare for ordinary Canadians? 1 in 10 Torontonians rely on food banks for daily survival. The unaffordable housing horrors keep breathing down the neck of average residents, and basic necessities are wildly out of reach for most people. The numbers are terrifying to say the least. The average price of a detached home in Toronto has skyrocketed to over $1.5 million, marking an increase of over 300% since 1990. And it's not just home ownership that's become unattainable for many inhabitants. Rent prices have also surged, with the average one-bedroom apartment costing upwards of $2,300 per month. To make matters worse, crime is on the rise and homelessness has become a common eyesore within the city. But how did we get here? And how was it easier for boomers buying in the 1990s to own houses, and in just over 3 decades later, the dream of owning a home in Toronto has now become mere delusion for many Canadians? What dark realities lurk beneath Toronto's glittering facade, tarnishing its allure as a sought-after destination for inhabitants and newcomers? In this video, we peel back the layers of Toronto's glamorous exterior to reveal the harsh truths that often go unnoticed by those dazzled by its shimmering skyline. The city of Toronto is currently seeing some really worrisome trends around opaque property ownership and financing. Recent data reveals a staggering reality. Billions of dollars worth of residential real estate spanning the Greater Toronto area have fallen into the hands of anonymous entities and individuals whose funding sources remain cloaked in secrecy. This clandestine acquisition of properties raises significant concerns about the integrity and transparency of the real estate market in one of Canada's most populous cities. As the influx of undisclosed capital continues to distort the market, the dream of homeownership becomes increasingly elusive for ordinary residents. The unchecked flow of funds from unknown sources distorts property values, exacerbates affordability challenges, and perpetuates inequality within the housing market. Sadly, these trends aren't just temporary either. Home prices in the region have been on an inexorable upward trajectory for over 2 decades now. A critical report from Ontario's Housing Affordability Task Force estimates that the entire province faces a shortage of 1.5 million homes, which must be built over a decade to close the housing gap. Zoning restrictions and policy barriers to densification may be blamed for this lack of housing supply. It's estimated that a staggering 70% of land owned for housing in Toronto is limited to single-family homes. These restrictions have physically prevented higher density developments from being constructed at scale, with new residents arriving each year, mostly concentrated in the downtown area of the city. This housing deficit keeps widening annually and needs urgent attention. Several interlinked factors are fueling this housing mania. Rise in population, limited land to build on, obsolete zoning laws restricting density, and chronic lack in new urban housing projects have created a massive supply shortage as demand rapidly outpaces new construction. It gets worse. The harsh reality is minimum wage workers can barely survive in today's Toronto. At $15.50 per hour for someone working 40 hours per week, their annual employment income before tax would amount to just $32,240. After deducting several taxables like the Canada Pension Plan, employment insurance, and income tax contributions, this nominal sum drops to around $29,300 based on estimates. Basic living costs like rent alone would already consume over 90% of that meager sum. Utilities like electricity, heating, internet, and cell phone plans now cost minimum wage earners hundreds more per month based on average costs in the region. Food costs have skyrocketed too, with basic groceries for a single person averaging over $300 per month in the city. In short, one can say that the $15.50 minimum wage income is now essentially a legislated poverty benchmark and a guaranteed path toward substandard living conditions in Toronto by every economic analysis and measurement. No wonder the rate of homelessness has soared steadily in recent years, with over 9,000 people living homeless in the streets on any given night, and over 85,000 are on the subsidized housing wait list. Bear in mind that these aren't just numbers. They are people, families, torn apart by economic hardship and a lack of affordable housing. Housing isn't the only area where Toronto exhibits worrying trends that could make it an even more difficult place to live in the coming years. The epidemic is even degrading into moral decadence, as poverty in most cases begets crime and other forms of debauchery. Toronto has seen a surge in criminal activity, reaching new highs in 2023, with violent crime rates reaching alarming heights. In 2022, the city recorded over 11,000 violent crimes, marking a 15% increase compared to Canada-wide increase of only 4%. In Toronto, Canada's largest census metropolitan area, or CMA, the proportion of violent crimes involving the use of firearms, 4.7%, was the second highest among CMAs. Its rate of firearm-related violent crime is 43.2 incidents per 100,000 population, rose 36% from 2021 and 93% since a low in 2013. These figures transcend mere statistics. They embody heinous and profoundly grotesque crimes that leave indelible marks on victims and the entire community. It also bolsters a perception of insecurity and anguish for the average inhabitant of the city. While crime rates can fluctuate year to year based on a variety of socioeconomic factors, Toronto's deteriorating community safety conditions correlate with the city's worsening cost of living and lack of housing affordability for low and moderate income residents. This means that legally derived income sources rendered insufficient to meet basic psychological needs of housing and sustenance, some portion inevitably turns to criminal activities as a desperate survival mechanism of last resort. These nightmarish numbers beg the question: how did Toronto come to become arguably the worst city to live in Canada? What is driving the downward spiral? Some point to the surge in the city's rapid population fueled by immigration. Looking at the numbers, Toronto is staggeringly popular among immigrants, more so than any other city in Canada. Despite the exorbitant cost of living, the city remains hugely attractive, as people continue flocking to from across Canada and around the world. Toronto's status as the epicenter of Canada's finance, tech, entertainment, and tourism industries is one of the main drivers behind its population explosion. However, this rapid growth has brought about a myriad of negative consequences for both newcomers and longtime residents alike. Firstly, Toronto's vibrant urban experience, often touted as a selling point, has become increasingly inaccessible due to skyrocketing housing prices and costs of living. What was once seen as an opportunity for newcomers seeking excitement and opportunity has now transformed into a barrier, with many struggling to afford rudimentary necessities amidst the city's exorbitant expenses. Moreover, while Toronto prides itself on its diversity and multiculturalism, the sheer volume of immigrants has led to overcrowding and strained public services. The city's infrastructure struggles to keep pace with the influx of residents, resulting in deteriorating public transit, longer wait times for healthcare services, and overcrowded schools. The diversity that once made Toronto a cultural melting pot has also contributed to its challenges. While the city celebrates its status as the most diverse in the world, the reality is that cultural tensions and social divisions often simmer beneath the surface. Neighborhoods once known for their unique cultural identities now face gentrification and displacement as rising housing costs force long-time residents out of their communities. Toronto welcomes a large percentage of Canada's newcomers at an average of over 100,000 people yearly. This essentially means that public services are strained, affordable homes are too few, transportation systems overwhelmed, and job opportunities scarce for many. With these realities in place, the vibrance that used to attract people to Toronto is now eroding. But it's not just immigration that is driving up the cost of housing and living. Investors have piled into the Toronto real estate market as prices climbed, with data showing investors now account for for around 25% of home purchases in some areas. This over-commodification has turned housing into an asset class highly disconnected from income realities of the average Canadian. Rental affordability has also been bone-crunching as landlords capitalized on scarcity and competition for units to raise monthly rents above what average residents can afford. These exorbitant housing costs is what makes living in Toronto unviable for anyone earning a low or moderate income. For families, couples, or anyone not earning six figures, the math simply doesn't add up in Toronto anymore. Unless you have generational wealth or a high-income job, it may be better to begin planning for a different future. What this means for the average Torontonian is that the dreams of building a quality life in this city is slipping further out of reach with each passing day. As families are forced to choose between putting good food on the table and paying rent, students are seeing their debts soar with no prospects of future job security, and everyone else is left with little hope as the city keeps teetering on the brink of collapse. As the city's population swells, other issues such as severe traffic congestion have also begun to worsen. The over-reliance on cars has turned gridlock into a perpetual nightmare that extracts a massive economic and quality of life toll. Toronto is placed as the 7th most congested city in the world and first in Canada, with commuters losing an average of 118 hours on highways during peak commuting periods. This amounts to over 2 full work weeks of valuable time wasted unproductively sitting in vehicles dilly-dallying on clogged roadways. Since traffic is increasingly hampering Toronto's economic productivity and livability scores, it's yet another deterrent to attracting top businesses and investors that will impact the job and housing market positively. Another brazen issue is the inner-city-inner suburb split on critical topics. For years, the inner-city dwellers have wanted more restrictions on cars, while inner-suburb dwellers want all areas of the city to be more car-friendly. Also, inner-city dwellers want more intensification of building in the inner suburbs, while inner-suburb dwellers want to keep apartment buildings and condos out of their neighborhood. To say the least, the social and living challenges of Toronto are many to discuss. Will the city descend further into chaos and despair, or will it find a way to reverse its downward spiral? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the road ahead is fraught with uncertainty, and the fate of Toronto hangs in the balance. Unless radical steps are taken to boost income levels, fix job shortages, rein in costs, and rebalance supply-demand disparities in housing, Toronto's tale of once being a quintessential Canadian success story of a diverse, thriving metropolis could soon be rewritten. Although Toronto may be facing its darkest hour, it's also a city filled with strength, courage, and determination. However, the choice is there to be made. Will its people rise to the challenge, or will Toronto be allowed to become the worst city in Canada? If you're considering a move to Toronto, brace yourself for the grim realities that await. Whether you're already a resident or contemplating a relocation, it's crucial to familiarize yourself with the harsh truths lurking beneath the surface. If you like this video, hit the like button and help us spread the word. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications on our latest news and analysis. In the meantime, check out one of these videos here to learn more. Thanks for watching.